We are back with another episode of Your Favorite Podcast. Yes, I've given myself the honor of being your favorite podcast. Sorry if you disagree. I'm in your ears now, so too bad. This season, I've been on a kick trying to learn something new in every episode, and buckle up because today is full of really good info about investment and retirement planning. And listen, I get it. It might not be the most exciting part of HR, but it's actually, I know, right? He's already interjecting. It's not the most exciting part of HR. Sorry. To some people, maybe to you. Okay, but we'll get to why though. But it's honestly like really critical for attracting the right type of candidates, retaining them, and also being a strategic HR leader. So in this episode, we're going to break down what HR leaders actually need to know about investing with no jargon, no fluff, because we all know I am the girl who Googles what is happening in the economy at least once a week, and practical insights to help you figure out how to build a strong retirement plan that works for your company and your people. And I guarantee you there's something relevant in this episode for every single HR person to know. And I couldn't do it without my incredible and very knowledgeable guest, Breene Murphy. Breene Murphy is the president of Carbon Collective Investing, one of America's top financial advisory firms by Newsweek, and famous for their sustainable 401ks for businesses and nonprofits. His journey into sustainability was inspired by his grandmother, Delta Murphy, a prominent civic leader and former board member of the USC Wrigley Institute for Environmental Studies. This inspiration led him to volunteer with the Citizens Climate Lobby, where he served as a congressional liaison and chapter co-lead, advocating for revenue-neutral carbon dividend. He also served as a board member at USC Wrigley Institute, contributing to environmental research and advocacy. Professionally, Breene started in advertising and financial services and now combines them with his passion of climate to focus on climate-smart investing with Carbon Collective. Beyond his environmental work, he has a background in creative writing, has a drawer full of unpublished novels, same, screenplays, teleplays, short stories, and poems. If only you could see my notes app. Breene, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I'm on someone's favorite podcast. I can't wait to meet these people.
I love that I forced them to tell me it's their favorite podcast. I've been playing with different intros all season, so that one is definitely my snarkiest one.
Yeah, it's a good way to ingratiate yourself. Aren't I your favorite? Like the things I do for you, you know?
It is. I bring them joy. Every week somebody does text me about something they hear on the podcast and they're like, yes.
Yeah. And it's so good because this week you have your favorite guest. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm super excited to have you on the pod. This is like a months in the making, from like our first conversation when you slid into my DMs on LinkedIn to now that this is happening. I just feel like you're going to bring so much knowledge to today's episode on a topic that I feel like is really misunderstood by a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into that. But before we do, I've been asking every guest this season, what's one area or topic that you're really interested in right now?
Oh, man. When I saw you picked up, so I've heard the podcast before, and the reason why I reached out is because I laughed out loud when I saw the title was I Hate It Here. So I am familiar with this. And if your intro isn't revealing how much of a nerd I am, this will. I am really interested in the ways in which humanity updates its systems to match the moments in time. For example, the next book I'm going to read is on Bretton Woods, which is, it's like somewhat successful, but it was a convening of global leaders to create like a global financial institutions that would create peace, because the beginning of the century was very, very violent. World War I, World War II. It was largely successful. We haven't had a world war since then, but those systems are starting to fail because they were built under this idea of infinite growth. And so I'm curious about like, how did they do that as a way to understand like how we might be able to do something to reimagine our systems again, to create more prosperity and peace, because humans, as much as we like to get down on ourselves, are actually amazingly, nimble and flexible and self-organizing. And that's like one of my favorite things about being one of these weird creatures.
I love that. You're also in good company because I'm a nerd and I'm going to go look up exactly what you're reading and possibly read it as well. I'm looking at a stack of books in front of me too. So, I'm always trying to find my next best read. So I'm excited.
Yeah, there's so many amazing books. So
not enough time. There's not enough time to get to all of them. I could read 100 books between now and the time I perish from this earth, and I still don't feel like it would be enough. I'm like always chasing my next book high.
Yeah.
which should tell you a lot about me.
Yeah.
But when we first met and we started this conversation, I was like telling you about the pod. We were talking about the things you're working on. You have like such a wide breadth of knowledge, but we like really zeroed in on this like investing topic
Yeah.
because I am the girl who did once write in her newsletter, BRB, I got to go Google the economy because there's so much that happens in the world that impacts our workplaces that I don't think necessarily everyone's thinking about. And so I was like, let's talk about investing. So, what's one thing you wish every HR leader understood about investing?
So the key thing that you said earlier was about strategic HR leaders. If you're a strategic HR leader, you're always going to be looking at what the landscape is that you're going to be operating in. Not just the company, but the like what you're, what the corporate environment's like, what your competitors are doing, what the larger macroeconomic environment. If you like just pay attention to investing, what's going on in the market, it will teach you so much. For example, a couple of years ago, there was rising interest rates, and it happened really fast. And I was not surprised that it meant that there was a lot of layoffs, because when you have cash be really inexpensive, it means it values growth at a company. And when you have cash become expensive, it means you value cash in the company. So profits are more valuable. And as a result, there was a bunch of layoffs. And so, I was talking to HR leaders. I'm like, this is what you should be expecting. Right. And that's just like one kind of market measure to be able to pay attention to. The ones now, it's like understanding what tariffs do to an economy, or the jobs report just came out and, it's 245,000 jobs, which is like jobs lost, which is a lot. And in a consumer economy, that is really tough. So it's like kind of, if you're a strategic HR leader, I would be thinking, okay, let's buckle up. These are going to be really interesting times. I'm probably going to have to double down on, focusing on like engagement, employee performance, really doing those things. And if you paid attention to investing, it gives you those quick bites, and that's why I think this is like the key hidden reason to pay attention to investing.
Yeah, when the layoffs started, I was like, I understand why this is happening. Like, I honestly did not, when they started happening, that's like when I really connected the dots. I wish I had been a bit ahead of it. Like, oh, I'm watching these interest rates. I'm predicting what's going to happen. I work at a lot of venture-backed companies. Like, I should have known that this was going to happen. But I think like that's not necessarily part of the HR skill set.
Right?
Like that. Yeah, no. But what I want it to be. But I want it
And
to
I also
be.
think this is not necessarily a lot of HR leaders' fault either.
No,
Like
no.
not both in the training, but also a lot of our clients, even at good companies, like they're under resourced, right? And so, a lot of times it's focused on like compliance tasks or day-to-day stuff. And if you're doing this, you have to be able to have the more or less the gumption to take 30 minutes to be strategic. 45 minutes or whatever it takes a week to really think through, like, what do I need to be doing? Because there's too many tasks to do.
Far too many.
Yeah. And so it takes that awareness to be able to step aside and start to be proactive. And that's a hard thing to do when you're in overwhelm mode.
Yeah. I mean, even like I read the job reports for fun because I'm like, I have to understand this. I have to understand what's happening.
This is how we get along.
This is why I get it, because I'm a dork. I'm like, oh, job report. I saw the same thing. I was like, oh, I know the federal government laying off people is definitely going to have an impact on economy. Like we have to, like that's like less how I think about it. And this is maybe too simple, but like that's less people out in the world who have additional income to spend on things. And if they can't spend money on things, companies can't make money. And that means they have to start worrying about their bottom line and also looking at their biggest expense, which is their people.
Yes.
So I think it's very scary. Like if you don't, it's hard at this point in HR to like not have to pay attention to what's happening in the world because it is having a very real impact on us at companies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not to jump the other, like we can go right into the other question because there's like two real reasons.
Yes. Okay. Why is it so important for HR leaders to understand investing?
I mean, the second thing in the day-to-day job, so many of the HR leaders are actually signing the Form 5500 for their 401k or 403b. And that means they're a fiduciary. So they're legally responsible, personally liable for their plans. And so there's just like a lot of responsibility. I know the face you're making.
My soul right now just like left my body. Like, did I sign that?
Yeah. Yeah. No. So you might not have, in which case you
Yeah.
might have pawned it off to someone else in your team to do it. Sometimes it gets signed by people in finance, but it's often the head of people. And so just knowing that like you're where the buck stops on this one is a good thing to know. And if you are, you should probably know a thing or two.
I mean, yeah, one would hope. But there's so much that falls under the HR bucket that I'm like, there are times where I'm like, does someone do this? Am I responsible for this? Is it really me? The other day, we had a really funny internal thing where we thought we were terminating our Google accounts. And then Google Workspace emailed and was like, we're charging you for all these accounts that we had suspended but not terminated. And it was so funny because the head of finance and I are like, how did this happen? Like, we thought we're turning them off in Rippling, we turn them off in Google, like we're still getting billed for them. And we're like on this wild goose chase. And I'm like, this is just a normal day in HR where like one thing happens that either we didn't know or we didn't have visibility, and we're trying to fix it and also manage it and then deal with the dumpster fires. And we're reactive more often than we can be proactive. It's a never ending like push and pull, I think, for our role.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, if it makes people feel any better, I think that is the case with almost every other role too, is like, there's always these fires that have to be put out. And it's like, how do you balance like that proactivity and setting, like, I think one of the most valuable uses of times is setting up good systems for you and your company to work well, because then it makes it easier to do the thing. No system's perfect though. So you're going to have fires. And so you have to like allocate between system creation and fire, putting out, so,
it's every day of my life.
I know, it's just like, as a human being, like I'm a parent to a 7 and a 4-year-old. You don't think like I think about this a lot,
People always laugh because they're like, oh, like you work in HR, you'd be like such a great mom. You have all the patience for it. And I was like, oh God, if only people understood the amount of patience I don't have on an average day for anything. But I like, this topic is just, it's so interesting because a lot of times also HR people inherit the systems that are given to them. So like very rarely, unless you are like employee number, I don't know, 4.
8.
4. I love that we both said 4. That was not planned.
Yeah.
Same brand. Unless you're like employee 4, I'm not picking
you know
the
what
things.
It's co-founder, and then you get the first person, and then they're like, oh shit, we're going to have to grow the team. And then they hire a person, to take off all their HR stuff. And they're like, and recruiting, and this, and compliance, like, and the and start, and they're employee 4,
Yeah. But then a lot of times, like, then you also like inherit the system that you don't necessarily pick. And so I think one of the really interesting things is like 401k providers. I have just walked into companies and been like, here you go. Like, it's just hand it to me. And I'm like, okay, cool.
I'm going to pray this doesn't break.
Yeah, honestly. So like, what in your recommendation, what's the best way for HR leaders to actually evaluate their 401k providers and ensure they're getting the best option for employees?
Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at it, I think the most important thing is to understand what it means to be a fiduciary to start. Like, what is your role? And so when you're starting it out, it is to provide investment options in the best interest of your employees. Like, you have to really think about like, who are my employees? What do they need? That's going to change a lot if you're at a doctor's office and you have a doctor who owns the business, and you have like, maybe eight or people who are working there, and they're maybe a nurse or a trainer or an administrative staff. Or if you're at a tech startup with like a bunch of software engineers, like what they need is going to be different. And so understanding that is like level 1 on how to even prepare. So once you go in with whatever that is, which is like, how much are they making? How much can they contribute? How do I have a compliant 401k plan? Then you can go and look based on your needs, right? And so that's usually looking at, so record keepers, it's like, what are the investment options? How are they going to charge? There's usually a couple different types of charges. So there's an administrative fee, which is for the company, and the company usually pays that. There's usually a participant fee, which is like the stupid 401k terminology for an employee or a human. You could say human, but they don't. I didn't make up this stuff. But it's like that. And you have to look at that, that employee fee. If there are any asset fees, you want them to be lower, obviously. But some asset fees, like might get you access to better things. Like you might be at a climate, or you might be at a startup that is in a cash crunch, and you need to zero out fees to the company. That might be the thing you need to do. That is in the best interest of the employees, so you don't have to fire people. That sucks, but that might mean you have to load fees into the plan so that, it's just, so knowing what you need is really important. And also what kinds of support you also need. Like, do you need support to offload your fiduciary responsibility? So that is the main thing that I do is our company is the fiduciary for the investments. You can't offload it completely. There are also 316. Our terminology is so nerdy. It's actually like tax code.
I'm like dying because this is so technical that as you're talking, I'm like, I need a whole episode with you on 401k 101. I called this question like 401k 101. I'm like, we need a whole episode about this because there's just like
totally. But this is how you get it in, and this is like before you even look at a fund list, right? So the good news is, in some ways, you're going to get a fund list that is going to be pretty plain vanilla if you don't get anything. And most of your employees do not have a high level of financial literacy, and so you're unlikely to be challenged on this.
I actually don't think I have a high level of financial literacy as you're explaining this to me. I'm like, holy shit, I need to go Google all of this right now.
No one does. And, as much as you need to learn about investing, the reason why 401ks are really valuable is because of taxes. Mm-hmm. Not like you can invest with a brokerage account with a little bit of money. The advantage is the amount of money you can put in before taxes that will then grow without capital gains on them, right? If you have a traditional 401k, you can also do a Roth 401k where you can contribute after taxes, and then you don't have to when you take it out after 59 and a half, you don't pay taxes on it for the rest of your life.
But doesn't that one have a salary threshold? Like you can't make more than X amount.
Not in 401k. That's what's
not
cool.
Not in 401k, but in
on the IRA level they do.
I love those. I'm showing you I know a little bit.
I'm seeing basically dance on here. It's like if you want arcane terminology and a place to like really get your groove on as a nerd, which I can tell you are, this is the place for you. It is so fun.
Poor everyone listening to this podcast that are like, oh my God, what are these two geeking out on? No, but a lot of people will find this very relevant because this is like my dad had one question when I accepted a job. He did not care about the title, the work. He had one question he asked: what's the 401k plan? Does your company contribute to it? He was just like a 401k man. He was like, everyone needs to max out their 401k. Here's why it's important. Here's what you need to do.
In America, it's the system for long-term financial security. This is what I tell people. For all the employees, this is why everyone needs to know about 401k, is it's a system for long-term financial security. The truth is, Social Security is not going to be enough for the most people, right? Like the average Social Security payout, I don't know what it is this year, but it's usually around like $2,000, $2,500. So you're looking at 30 grand a year. Are you going to be able to live on that? For most people, no, right? That won't even cover rent. So what the United States has done, and this is not a bad thing, by the way, this is just our system, has done is created tax breaks, right? So there's capital gains tax breaks for a lot of U.S. citizens to contribute in this manner. My belief is the gap is they've done all of this. It's very complicated and there's been no education, right?
Yes.
So we don't like if you knew what to do, like if you knew to ask this question when you were, however old you are when you get your first job, that has 16. A 401k. A lot of them have you have to be 21 years old to be eligible for a 401k. It's a very common number. So let's say you're 22, you're fresh out of college, you're in your 401k, you're like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do here, right? It would help you negotiate because you need to be able to earn enough money to contribute your, 15% total and maybe 4% is matched. So you only have to put in 11% so that you'd be on track for retirement. And you're like, that's what I have to do. I'll set it up right now. Yeah.
But that's not reality because isn't the average American so far behind in their 401k
so far behind. I mean, one of the biggest things that's problematic is the number one reason why people don't contribute to their 401k is they're not paid enough.
Yes. I was just thinking in my first job, did I contribute to my 401k? I think I made $40,000 a year in my first job, and I don't think I did because I was like, I need that money to pay rent.
Yeah.
Like, how am
And
I going
so,
to live?
like, you might live in an expensive area. You might have like medical costs. Like, there's just a bunch of reasons why it's really hard to contribute. Um, and, you know, going into this, it's like, there's so much connection to mental health and financial security. Like, if you're worried about paycheck to paycheck, like it's one of the life stressors, right? It's one of the number one causes. It's one of the top causes for divorce.
Yes.
Um,
Finances.
yeah. Yeah. So it's like, if you know these things and
Yeah.
your employer, it's like, it's a key aspect of helping create a great culture is making sure that people have the long-term financial security. Now, I get it. We're in like really challenging times. Business owners are in challenging times. I do understand, but I do believe that there are smarter ways that we can set things up. Set up our, again, like I was saying before, set up our systems so they work for our people.
Yeah, it's hard though, because when you're looking at a CEO who's like, you have to cut all costs or just saying that thing is not possible. I worked for a company where there was where they should have had a 401k and they did not have a 401k option for any of the employees. Their response was, you get equity in this company and that should be enough for you.
And you know what? Like, if you're going uphill, like, not everyone gets it. And that's really hard.
Every year we made the ask, can we get a 401k this year? They said no. So 401k match. Sorry, there was a 401k option. There's just not a 401k match. We were like, can we get a match? No.
Because that's largely the biggest expense associated with 401ks.
Yeah, I really don't think the average employee understands that. But like, we get emails from Human Interest, who's our 401k provider. We get emails that say like, you contributed this amount and your company
Yes.
matched this amount.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of employees realize like, your company's giving you free money.
Yes.
And you should think of that as
With
part of your
tax advantages to it. Like, there's not going to be
Yes.
capital gains on that, you know? And the thing that's hard about it, and this goes back into the mental health, financial issues that come with money, is all that money is for in the future, right? You're not supposed to take it out until you're 59 and a half.
God.
You know? And so, although I just read an article talking about how people are just taking that 10% penalty right now to use their 401k savings, which, again, a little bit of a yellow flag on the economy, you know?
We are in really hard times. So many people have lost their job in the last 2 years. Like, people, every day I see a story on LinkedIn and my heart like truly goes out to these people. I feel so much empathy for them. And they're like, I've been out of a job for a year. I've exhausted my savings. I've exhausted my 401k. And I'm like, this is a relatively young person who at this point is not looking at a 59 retirement. They're looking at a 70 retirement or working until the day they die.
I'm really fortunate. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm retired 59 and a half.
Yeah.
I'm 42. That's only 17 years away.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to happen to me. I hope so,
I
but like, probably
I'm
not.
like, maybe.
Yeah. If
that would be nice. It's kind of so my mom is like one of my inspirations. She's like a total finance nerd. And she's like one of the best investors I've ever seen, by the way.
Smart. She taking clients? Can she help me? Just kidding.
Oh my, she totally would talk to you.
Love that.
She is like a really lovely person. And if you think I'm nerdy, she is just as nerdy. But like with my mom, you know, one of the things that, you know, she would dive into is like, you know, just making sure that you understood when you would be able to retire. And she would always have this like mental formula of, you know, plan for the worst, hope for the best. She's like, how can I get to the best? But like, it was almost, you know, it was actually, if I think about it, that's what she would say, but it was really plan for the best and plan for the worst. Because she would try to get to the best.
Yeah.
But she would look at it like, this could really happen. I need to protect my family.
Yeah.
And so some of my favorite times when she scared the crap out of my dad, because my dad, I love him. I love him so much. He is not good with money. Right?
Like a free spirit.
It's just not what he does.
Yeah.
And so like I watched my mom do some investments back in 2011 and 2012 that really scared my dad. It was like, I was like, go mom, scare him.
Love that. Your dad's like, not for me. But it's
like,
so interesting.
Ah!
Yeah. But it's like so interesting because like nobody teaches this. Honestly, like our
No.
biggest gap in education, first of all, there are a lot of gaps in education. We should also
Oh,
pay teachers
totally.
more.
I actually don't think it's the biggest gap, but I think it's up there.
But like nobody knows any of this. Like I adopted the habits of my parents because that's what my dad told me to do.
Oh yeah, it's observational.
But like, what if my dad never told me that? And I have a friend who's like really smart with her finances, was really pursuing the like fire, I want to retire early
Yeah.
situation. And her father was in finance. And I'm like, I see the connection. Like we're literally
Oh,
passing on
totally.
our habits. So like imagine somebody's parents or whoever raised them didn't tell them how to do this. And now we don't educate people on how to do this. And then you get to your first job and you're like, why would I contribute 3 to 5% of my paycheck to this thing that I'm not going to see for 40 years?
Yeah.
And I feel like Gen Z is really interesting. Like, not that they're Gen Z is like, we're anti-investing, but I have seen like a trend of like people contributing less to their retirement funds. Like outside of, do you think it's like a generational thing? Like, how are you thinking about that?
I just think they're young. I don't know. Like I think a
We
bunch of
think we're
my
going to live
friends.
forever.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I just think like a bunch of my friends like weren't contributing to a 401k when we were young. I have a big belief that there are small differences between generation to generation, but it's like if you have no education about how to invest, like what stocks, what bonds are, like why to have a diversified portfolio. Maybe you don't have Uncle Breene that like will talk to you about like why target date funds are one of the coolest financial innovations in the last 30 years, right?
Can
Like,
I be Googling that?
yeah, no, we'll talk about that. But it's like, I'm like, this is so cool. Do you know how awesome this is? They don't have that person in their life to do that. And so as such, they don't have that borrowed enthusiasm and knowledge to go, I need to do this. And I just think
Yeah.
like, we just have this like huge knowledge gap of like how important this is. And so I just think it's normal for a young person. I also think there's like more young people that like I've got more young people like reach out and be interested, like high schoolers and stuff. So
Cool.
they just end up becoming like the weird kid like me, or you.
I mean, definitely me. I'm a weirdo, but it's just so interesting. So coming back to that, like financial stress is like the number one like stressor in a lot of people's lives. I don't know. I can't remember the stat, but it's like the cause of divorces, but also like the cause of stress in your life. And like,
Suicides.
yeah, if you're stressed about all those things, you can't show up and like do your best work
So
at
hard.
work. And
So
that's
hard.
like, it's just I think about that all the time. So I'm like, how do we make this better? But like, I can't control how everyone spends their money, but also what kind of things can we do as HR to like help people understand their financial, like increase their financial literacy. There are a lot of companies that do provide that as a benefit.
Totally. And we do as well. And one of the things that I think a lot about is how scary finance is because the stakes are so high,
Yeah.
at the same time that we have so little knowledge. And this is not something you can like charge for, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've thought is, and it goes actually back to like the movie Life is Beautiful, which is like the ability to be enthusiastic and optimistic is so valuable to help break down that like inertia and fear. So when I come in, I'm always like, you guys, I'm going to talk to you about something so exciting. They're like, really what? And I'm like, investing, They're like, and then all of a sudden you get some people in the audience that are like, wait, no, this is good. This is good.
Wait, actually, I
Or
like
let's
this.
talk about stocks. Like,
Yeah.
So it gets us into this place of, thinking about a better future is actually exciting.
Yeah.
It's not how we're hardwired as humans. A lot of times when we live in a complex world.
Yeah.
Like
That
there
we
are
do.
fears, right?
That we do.
It's not like everything's going like swimmingly right now.
No.
And so it's like, if I know that, then it can be hard and uncomfortable to think about what would a good life look like. But this is where I come in and go, screw that. Like, let's still think about this is where like my mom comes in and go, let's plan for the best. We'll plan for the worst too, but let's like see how we can get there. What does it really look like? Where are we gonna live? What are we gonna do? Like, are you going to have an entire library of books, and a rowboat with a lake that you can tether out and read books on the water? Like, doesn't that seem nice?
Seems so nice. I need to be dreaming more. I need to be
Yeah,
doing
but
that.
it's like, but once you dream, then how can we ladder back to like, okay, how do I actually get there?
Yeah.
You know, like what do I need to do? And then as soon as you go, you're like, I don't have enough money for that.
Yeah, I don't.
And then you can go, yeah, but then you can go, okay, well, how could I get enough money for that? Right. And this is where one of the things that I also try to break down is, this is especially true of a lot of my clients who tend, they come to me for sustainable 401ks, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, they have this conflated idea that money is the root of all evil.
Mm.
But that's not the actual biblical verse, right? It's the love of money above all else is the root of all evil,
Okay.
right? Money is a useful tool. It's just you can't love it over everything, right? And
Definitely
then you
not.
become, I mean,
Not for me.
Scrooge, right? Like Charles Dickens wrote about this. It's like it's the classic, like the guy that values his money over the relationships in his life is the person that's unhappy.
Yeah.
Like, and then he gets 3 ghosts and things all turn out better. So I'm just waiting for the 3 ghosts for some people.
I'm just waiting for the 3 ghosts to get here. No, I mean, like you make a good point. I think like because the world is the way the world is right now, and it is harder to live, and we've seen like employee salaries have not kept up with inflation. I think
totally.
like people are like, how can I even think about the future when I'm trying to figure out if I can afford anything tomorrow?
Right. So there's also things that, and this is where, I'm really fortunate. I'm very fortunate in my life, and I know that. And one of the good things is that I am comfortable with finances, and so this enabled me to leave a cushier job, to go start something that was deeply meaningful to me. I love my job. I can take my mom's financial nerdiness and be on this podcast here. Like my mom, I'm going to 100% send this podcast to her.
Hell yeah. Hi, Mom. Come on the podcast next.
Yeah. Her name's Ellie and she's wonderful. Right. But
she used to teach me things.
Yeah. But my dad also had this thing that like really resonated with me. And it's like, my dad's hilarious. He's like this very classic, larger than life Irishman. But he always had this joke of to make the world an eighth of an inch better. Oh. Right. It's like, how can you make the world just a little bit better?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's what matters to me. Right. And so I'm trying to think about like, how do we live and create a more sustainable life? Because I think everyone wants that. And, I get to live those things out, which is like my parents' influences with like what makes me authentically real and care. And it's like, so I get to talk to people about money and figure out their pathways, how to dream. And so when I made the change, I had to make a bunch of financial cuts in my life, but I knew where to make them. Like there's a lot you can do. People get really resourceful. That is really beautiful. There can be amazing things that come up out of it. It's like building community around people that, if you can't afford to do certain things, there's a bunch of free things you can do, that are simple. And so it's like, and there are some people that are like really tragically poor, and I'm really sorry about that, but like, let's try to help everybody. Like, how can we do that?
I don't think that's like the world. The world feels very siloed and individualistic lately. And so I think like when you say like there are people who really need our help, I also think about that. Like I am trying to make the world better. Like I joke about I hate it here, but it's because people do really hate their jobs and feel like they're treated terribly. And it's like, what is our role as HR people? Which like every HR person I talk to is like so compassionate, so empathetic.
Totally.
And they actually want to make work better. And we're fighting against this like perception that like HR is not there to be your friend, or HR is just there to hire and fire you. And it's like, no, a lot of HR leaders are actually trying to make your experience better. And thinking about things like 401k investing and at what benefits we even offer you is like also our way of trying to support the people who might not have had all the privilege that everybody else has had. It's like to even the playing field to a certain extent, which feels impossible to do.
401ks really like have a lot of regulatory non-discrimination built into them, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you have to pass discrimination testing when you have a 401k, which is to make sure like the really highly compensated employees at your company don't contribute too much, right? Mm-hmm. Like there is discrimination testing in the 401k market built to help with this, and understanding that and that, it's annual testing if you don't have a match, right? Of are my wealthy, employees like contributing too much? They're called like HCEs. This is like highly compensated employees. Right now it's $155,000 a year. or owners. And so if those people are contributing 70 or 80%, they're going to have their money returned to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, why do I have this? And it's always in that voice.
Yeah.
Or at
It's
least
always in that voice.
Yeah. Or at least that's
Why?
the voice I hear it in when I see the email.
Yeah.
And it's like, because you're not contributing to your employees, and if you contribute to your employees through a safe harbor match, that allows, your owner or highly compensated employee to then, max out their contributions too.
I'm dire for us to find the community of HR people who are as smart at 401ks as you are. Or just like,
I definitely have some HR leaders that are really good at it. Some that have asked disproportionately good questions. There's I don't want to reveal him by name because the one I know that was really good that I loved. He's a very quiet person. And
yeah,
so
we're not going to put anyone on blast on this, but I think this topic is so interesting to me because no one teaches you. There's no crash course in this. Again, back to there's the whole finance, but we as HR people also need to know this stuff.
Well, there's also the other thing too, which is the icky part. And this is I am, by the way, and I'm saying this with blaring lights here going, which is I'm complicit in this, which is the people that are teaching you have a financial incentive to teach you. Right? Say
more. What do you mean?
Okay. So my business is to get people like you to go, oh, I have problem. You said human interest. I have some things of human interest that aren't working. I should go talk to someone. I'm going to talk to Breene. He knows what's going on. And then I would, you go Breene knows what's going on. He can make my plan better. I'm going to do this. Right. That is an icky relationship. And I like to call it out because I like to be transparent and honest, but that sucks as the business model of, you mean I have to go learn about all of this from Fidelity or from Charles Schwab or from Breene? Maybe he's more enthusiastic and that's good. But that's not a good framework. I wish there was much more in giving people good paradigms in school, how to think about investing, right? One good question that I always think about is the most important question in investing is, when do you need the money? When do you need the money? If this is retirement money, you don't need it for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So you can add more risk, more stocks that go up and down a lot, right? If you need it sooner, let's say you need it next week to pay for something, that's got to be in your bank account, liquid, going to come out, right? And then there's everything in between, right? And so it's if you understood that, it would be much easier to go look at a fund list if you're an HR person and be able to say, oh, I don't like this, this fund in my plan. Or should we add this? Or, the thing that we've been kind of really sophisticated on is making a really elegant argument for adding sustainable investments on a pecuniary level.
Yeah.
Right. So the core thing that we go back to is oil isn't projected to have much growth in energy demand over the next 25 years, which is the same timeline under which you and I are thinking about retirement.
Yep. Hopefully.
Right. So if you're thinking about that, it's already been one of the worst performing sectors over the last 10 years. What makes this thing it's going to suddenly poof become good? It's facing lawsuits, regulatory pressures. I get in the United States, it's getting its day again right now. But that doesn't change the economics of it. It doesn't change the fact that China is dumping money in solar, batteries, electric vehicles. They're going to have a $12,000 electric vehicle that's going to come out that's as nice as a Tesla that costs $50,000. Right? What happens to the world when that happens? Are they going to want to go buy a $65,000 Audi? Probably not.
Never been interested in that life, honestly.
No, but I'm just saying,
I know.
When you're looking at these things of dominant paradigms that are shifting, it's we're in a paradigm that's under passive investing, which needs to be a gold standard, needs to be included in a plan. It was made famous by Vanguard and Jack Bogle. And it's basically saying the markets are so efficient that just buy everything and allocate it appropriately, right? Put the right amount of stocks and bonds for you, right? And this is what makes target date funds the coolest financial innovation, because if you know when you're going to retire, you can make something that starts really aggressive when you're young and gets more conservative as you get older. And so it's making a portfolio that is as good as what you get from most financial advisors with one click. Brilliant.
Okay,
So
I'm going to have to do that.
So cool. It's so cool.
You're selling
and then you
me.
get options on your 401k that are by asset class.
Yeah.
Which means like, do they have really big companies? Do they have small companies? Do they have bonds, which are basically loans? Those are much more predictable.
Yes.
And so it's
I
like,
know
so it's, you then get to choose once you leave the target date investment options. So
that's very cool. I'm going to look it up after this, honestly. Like I feel like I have novice level financial literacy. I'm always trying to learn more. I'm always trying to I love the movie. This is so weird. I love the movie The Big Short.
Oh, it's so fun.
It's so
Adam
fun,
McKay
but also
is a hilarious writer.
Also excellent Twitter follower. The man is ruthless.
Yes. Yes.
I'm like, you're the best Twitter follower I think I've ever followed. This is so good.
He's good.
I love that movie. And while it was like, I understood what happened in 2008 and what caused all these things to happen. And a lot of people it did not go well for them. And I was like graduating college at the time. Was I in college? I can't remember.
I just came out of college. So I was in 05.
Yeah. So like, I remember like everyone being scared about the economy and but I like love that movie because I feel like it, and while I'm sure it glamorizes something that should not be glamorized, it also like explained really clearly the actual devastating impact on making decisions and what that has on all of us. And I think like going back to you saying everything is interconnected, I think that's like one of the most important things we have to remember as HR people as we're even looking at our 401k and we're thinking like, do I want to do anything with it this year?
Yeah. And like, I mean, you know me about this. Like, I'm going to bring enthusiasm. I love nerding out. Like, if anyone wants to like talk with me, I'm like, yes, tell me what you have. Like,
they'll definitely come find you after this podcast. That happens all the time. But I mean, like,
I love just being like, you have this. Like, I love if they have some weird wrinkle that, like, I'm like, oh, I want to go learn about that.
See,
because there's so much customization that comes with retirement plans.
Yeah,
that you end up finding new stuff all the time. Like, I know people that have had like 30-year careers. And I'm like, whoa, you did that? How'd you do that? So it's just fun to, I don't know.
That's the newsletter I want to read. Yeah, that's the newsletter. I'm like, can you write that in a newsletter? Because I would read that about like things, what people have done. Because I mean, I think like the best way to learn is to also look at like the mistakes we've made. So when you're talking to folks and you're like reading about all this stuff, like what are some of the biggest mistakes you think HR leaders have made when it comes to offering investment and retirement benefits?
I think the biggest mistake is that they don't do anything about it. Right.
God,
they think about this as like not important. Right. I just like, that is the thing that I see over and over again is like, so I think that the second mistake that I see made is, that they don't understand what the benefits are, and what their employees and their owner needs. Right. So like they don't take the time to understand what the people that they're serving, if they are fiduciaries, it's in their best interest, who the people are that they need. Because they might be different. For example, there are types of plans that you can help create. And this is like in plan design, called new comparability. And this will sound kind of icky, but it does some cool stuff. That will create two classes of employees, like the owners and the regular employees. And what it will allow it is for the owners to contribute way more to their 401k. This is like really common at like small plans. It's called new comparability. You have to do the study. It costs a little bit more, but the amount it's going to save your owner is going to be huge. It will be a massive impact. Maybe you work at a doctor's office and you really love your doctor and you're like, how can I help them? This would be something that I don't know if it's right for them, but it's at least worth considering.
Okay.
The thing that's cool for the employees is there's minimum amounts of contributions that you have to make because again, it can't be too discriminatory. So you can have between 3 and 8% that has to be given to the employees, And so if you're getting 8%, even though you have to get your owner a lot of money and it saves them a bunch on taxes, like you're going to be helping yourself and helping that person. And basically it's money that would have otherwise gone to the government. And the government wants you to do this. Right. So that's like just it's a very common weird one is what I'd say. So there's things like that. It's like, what do my teams need? Do I need a match? Do I have a bunch of software engineers that are going to be considered highly compensated employees? Am I going to be top heavy? Do I need to have a 4% safe harbor match to do it? That's another common one. It's just knowing that you need to do that. So it's not too terrible. The other one I look at is like undervaluing service. And this one, again, this is like, if I need like sirens or lights on this to be like, flaring bias alert. No, like I'm like, it is both important, and I'm biased, and it doesn't mean that my bias is wrong.
Yeah.
But a big challenge is that we see is not getting the right service from your 401k, which is, are they doing the right education for my employees so they understand the benefit?
Yeah.
Right. Because if they don't understand the benefit, they might not contribute. Right. They might not contribute to the right thing. They might actually have hard questions. They might be able to get a loan that will enable them to get a house and then pay themselves back.
Yeah.
Right. There's a bunch of like little nuances to 401ks that are really amazing, that if you're not having someone that's doing the education and answering questions, it's like, there's a little bit of a missed opportunity. Because the other thing is, like, there's simple things like, are the rollovers going well? There's a report that comes out almost every year, and it's from oh gosh, I'm blanking on them, but they help with rollovers. But there's $1.65 trillion in stranded 401k assets.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes. $1.65 trillion in stranded 401k assets, which means money that listeners on this call, have earned and just left it at their old employer. Now, that's okay. You can do that. You can go back, but it's so easy to forget if you don't have it in your control.
Yeah, I actually am trying to figure this out for my old employer from a few jobs ago. It's been on my list to roll it over to my other one.
So one of the things that we try to do is like help with a rollover. We try to bring the enthusiasm. So
I love that. I'm like, I'm so triggered right now that I need to go get my rollover done.
Everyone is. So we do these things called rollover parties, and we just try to be happy and help people with their rollovers.
I love that.
Because like, we know that people don't like this, but like, let's just bring some fun to it. It's like, be excited. How do you figure it out? Usually it's contacting your old employer, being able to re-log in. They might have changed systems. That sucks. So you have to really talk to the people and get your login so you can move it out. They want it out too, because it will reduce their costs oftentimes. So you just have to like go find it. You can go online to the Department of Labor has a site called eFast. And I know, super memorable. But you can look up who signs on the plan, and to talk to that person if you're like really in a pinch. Like I can do this for you, but I'm not going to do it on like.
You're not. I'm going to do it myself. But I also am trying to remember all my 401ks. I know where one is, and I'm trying to remember if I've rolled over all of them somewhere else.
Yes. And my friend, Brooke, who works at this company, is going to be like, Breene, I can't believe you're not saying my company's name right now. I'm like, do
they do this for you? Because I will literally pay someone to go find my 401ks and put them in the right place.
We help. So we also have an individual side, and we help our individuals roll assets over too.
I gotta do that.
But we try to help. The thing is, like, we think it's too hard. Investing there's too much jargon, and there's not much humanity. Like, I find that most people, this is not everyone, so the way they learn is to have someone tell them about it first so they can have a framework, because a person usually tells it in the form of a story. So they go, oh, this thing happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and like, let's see if this matches, when I can go do my research of like, what is good. But like, people don't even have like the person to talk to even figure out what to do, and they just go read a bunch of stuff and nothing sticks. So they need someone. Like I had my mom, I still have my mom, which is really, I don't know why I said had in the past.
Yeah, oh my God, I was like, do we need to talk about this?
We don't. She's doing great.
We're not going to give her the evil eye now. We are going to good.
But if I ever had a problem when I was younger, I could be like, Mom, like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And my mom would be like, oh, like I have like spreadsheets on this. I'm like, oh God, I did it. I did the thing. Yeah. So like I had someone that would tell me, and then I could go research it. And so now I've done it enough where I know how to do it for myself. I'm comfortable with doing it for myself. Yeah. I've been that way for a while, but that wasn't always the case, And so I had that person. So it just sometimes takes a person to help.
For sure. And we've covered like so much that like I literally wrote down terms that I'm going to have to Google after this because I too want to get like smarter and improve my own financial literacy.
Yeah.
It's like such an interesting topic. You'll have to come back for another episode where we like laser in on one thing because we've been talking like really wide too. But it's like we should pick a topic and laser in on it and like really get deep because this topic has so much nuance to it and there's so many different areas we could take it. Like we've talked investing at a high level and then like thinking about the 401k and
I would love if there's some way to have some sort of like survey that comes out on this. I'm like, what is your biggest problem in 401k? And if I could read it and you read it, because like sometimes people write the thing and
Yeah.
like I know what the why is behind the why
Yeah.
because I've done it a bunch, but like I would love to be able to like get it. Could we get 50, 100 responses of like, what are the biggest pains that people have?
We got to go figure that out. Well, it'll have to be like a linked book. Maybe we can make it happen.
I just know like in my experience, like the HR leaders I've talked to,
Yeah.
I've read reports and stuff, but I always find that the reports are a little bit different because, you know,
Well, from what's actually happening. Yeah. I mean,
well,
I think
like I like Lattice, for example. I think they do a bunch of really cool reporting on what it means to be a good HR leader, right? But when they release their reports, like 401k, like barely is a half of a blip on their reports, right? Because it's just not what's top of mind for HR leaders.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. If someone's listening to this episode and you've made it this far and you have thoughts on this episode, 401k, I'm going to tell you to reach out to me. Literally put in the subject line 401k and put it in a LinkedIn DM and I will make conversations happen. Because I don't think, honestly, if I went to any of my HR friends right now and I'm like, what are your top challenges? I don't even think looking at their 401k company investing strategy is even in their like top 20.
No, I don't think it is.
They're just like, it's not broke. Why fix it?
Yes. It's praying that it's not broke and hoping that if they avoid looking at it, they won't find a problem, but knowing that they probably will find a problem if they go look at it.
Oh God. Okay.
It's like such a queasy feeling.
I know. If you could change one thing about how companies approach investing and retirement planning, what would it be?
I wish they would pay their employees more.
Okay. What? People don't have endless funds.
But a little bit more. Like I think some form of equitability would be really helpful for our country as a whole. Like if we didn't have the disparity that we have right now of people making millions, like this doesn't happen at every company. I think there's a lot of companies where it's like the boss makes a couple $100,000 and the person makes $65,000. And like, look, in that such scenario, I get it, right? I do. But I think in these large scenarios where, you know, Starbucks, the guy's making $100 million.
I mean, CEO salaries are the highest they've ever been. Shareholders are making hand over fist so much more money from stock buybacks, and the average employee salary has not increased to keep up with inflation.
Yeah, I just think if we could pay people enough that they contribute to their 401k, like I can't wait for the day that the number one reason that people don't like invest in their 401k is like they have their own personal investing strategy that is different.
You want that?
Yeah, I do. Like I want people, like I'm a person that doesn't think that our system is very good.
Yeah, I think you and a lot of people
I don't
believe
think
that, including
I mean, my core complaint is that we're not educating people on the system that we do have. And as a result, it's not working. But I even believe that even with education, we'd still have some failures in getting enough people to have long-term financial security, which I think is like, I love America. Like I care about Americans, like being able to do this, you know? And I think there's no place that's perfect, and I don't think so, but like, it's one of my favorite. I think the spirit of American innovation and trying to make things a little bit better is something beautiful to me and something that's always resonated.
Yeah.
You know? So I just like, how can we make it a little bit better?
Yeah. But there's like, you and I both share that, but then there's like a lot of things that also go awry in that spirit of innovation.
Oh,
like
totally.
Who gets to it? And like, you know, that's a whole other episode for another time. But okay, I always like to end on like tools, resources, advice. What tools, if people are listening to this and they're like, holy cow, I need to go figure out my 401k. I need to go talk to everyone and do all these things, tools, resources that you have for the listeners.
Yeah, I think in resources that like just in general education, a lot of times you can start with, you know, like writers, influencers, those types of people. You know, Tori Dunlap at her first 100K, she's pretty fun. And you have to know that like creators and content creators have a different type of messaging that they're able to do.
Yeah.
for regulatory reasons. Like I'm not allowed to be promissory, and she could be like, you need to do this. Right. I don't get to do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
That's not something in my wheelhouse. She has a different tool set than I do.
Yeah.
People like her, if you want to go to investment, there's a lot of like, I find that a lot of HR leaders are women, so I'll give more women. Lizanne Saunders at Schwab is awesome. She's really fun to read on the broad economy. She's brilliant. You can look at the women that lead Abacus Wealth Advisors. Neela, I don't know Neela, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name well.
It's okay, you're trying.
So I'm not even going to do her last name. Okay. There's also Lindsay Woodward, who's the co-CIO there. She's a good writer. I find their stuff is really good. This is like general investing.
Yeah.
I think the unfortunate thing on the 401k side is just like Googling stuff, and you'll get a lot of record keepers, which is like the very nerdy term for 401k software. They have a lot of information. People like myself, we have a bunch of investment advisors. We're in some ways better, some ways worse, because like you don't need us, but we can be very helpful. It's kind of like a broker and an agent. Like you like working with us can make the experience a lot easier, right? But you don't need us. So sometimes just talking to us is good. And then, just like thinking about how I think that one of the biggest resources is people themselves understanding like the role money has played in their own life and just reflecting upon that. And then just figuring out like, what do they need to learn once they've paired it with all the other things in life, that they're reading, the Lizanne Saunders and the Lindsay Woodwards and those types of folks. So
that was really helpful. That was a list of people I'm going to go follow, and definitely going to explore like my upbringing and what it meant. Like I had one working parent, and my dad was very much like pro 401k for all of us. So it became like a talking point in my family. But
totally.
I feel like you have to come back for another episode because we we talked very widely.
We didn't even talk about the fun list, barely.
We got to get in deeper on this next time.
And
next
like
season.
The know-it-alls, like the people that bother you, and
next season will be here before we know it. So you might hear from you again. You'll have to come back. I have a really good topic.
I'm your favorite guest.
Yeah, totally.
Our listeners' favorite podcast.
To be clear, you coined that yourself because my other friends come on this podcast too, and I don't want them mad at me about this. You were my favorite.
I know you're agreeing with me already.
I love this. Okay, for people looking to get in touch with you,
I know that, but I'm taking a page from my favorite hosts.
It's me. I'm your favorite host. Yeah, it's the best podcast on earth. For people who want to get in touch with you, I always put your notes in the show notes, but like, is there an avenue that you think is just better? Them emailing you, them DMing you? What's the best thing?
I mean, LinkedIn or email. I write a lot on LinkedIn about this, which I know is like, and climate, like investing in climate are the things I write about. And then you can email me at breene@carboncollective.co. So I'm here. I love talking about this.
And he'll be back. But thank you so much for spending time with us today. This is great. I learned a lot. I have a lot of things to go Google, sadly.
Yeah, it's fun.
This is the year I get super smart about these things. I'll add it to my list.
Yeah. Go do some research and talk to me about like the new questions that come up.
I can't wait. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
It'll be fun. All right.
See ya.